All right, welcome back to the show. I am Carrie Cohen, your host, practicing psychotherapist for 25 years, and nervous system and attachment expert. So, we are in season two, and today I am talking about the myth of the superwoman, why asking for help is actually your superpower. So, for those of you women who have been programmed to not ask for help, to take charge, to do things yourself. Maybe you delegate, but maybe you don't. This could apply to whether you do or don't delegate. Delegate. Really, what we're talking about is this idea of just not asking for help and doing it all yourself. Okay, so what I want to talk about is I'm going to talk about a few places that this probably originated from. It's always helpful to know the source of something. I am really big on root cause in all of the work that I do. I like to understand, for the most part, why something is the way it is. How did it get there? We don't need to get into every single fine detail of it, into the minutia, but it is helpful to know why it got there, how it got there, and what function it's serving. And then we can substitute it with something else. Can usually find something that's more helpful and that you're able to justify. So we're challenging here that kind of the notion that strong women, independent women really need to do it all on themselves, right? So this is the kind of woman who like gets the job done. You don't waste any time. People call on you to lead projects at work, in any of your volunteer efforts, in your personal life. They're asking you to plan events, to help them plan events. People are always calling you because they know that you are the woman who gets the job done. Now, maybe you say yes because you just know you're good at it. You're not necessarily a people pleaser, but you say yes because you're good at it and you know you can do it. So there are many times that I've been in many groups and I was called upon, or people intimated that, like, oh, we need such and such done, and I'd be like, oh, I could do that. Yeah, I mean, I could do that. I could do that easily. Like that's just like an easy strength for me. So what happens is that you become known as the woman who can just do it all. And that's fine, but when you're taking on from many areas of life, say work, at home, in your kids' school, now you're doing it all and you're piling on and you're actually not really delegating. And if you're not asking for help, then it starts to become problematic. So I'm going to show you how asking for help is really your superpower. So one of the things that I have gotten really actually excellent at is delegating. I no longer have a need to do everything myself. I don't even want to do everything myself. Um, I've had a very big paradigm shift around that. And this is really what it requires. This is not just like a behavioral change where you stop asking for help and other people start asking you, like, start asking how they can help. This actually starts with you on the inside. And because you're coming from being someone who doesn't actually ask for help. You rarely show all of you, like your flaws, your faults. Like it's a natural thing. It's not like you're walking around hiding them. It's just a natural thing. And maybe you actually don't have a ton of mistakes you make. I wasn't someone who really made many mistakes at all, actually. um, but also, vulnerability probably feels unsafe to you if you really think about it and go deep down, deep down. Like being vulnerable, showing all of yourself, that probably doesn't feel super safe. So if we're putting all of this together and we're thinking about the persona, the woman, who is this woman? Let's talk about some of the places, the sources that this kind of dynamic, this pattern of relating develops. So there's a few places. I'm going to give you some broad categories. And while I'm sharing these, I want you to just reflect back and think like, okay, does that resonate for me? Is that sort of part of the fabric woven into who I have become? And remember, anything woven into who we've become, anything patterned in can be woven out, can be patterned out. That is the beauty of the work that I do. I wouldn't do it otherwise if we could not make those shifts. So, okay, so let's say maybe you were raised to be strong and independent. Like maybe we think birth order, maybe you were the first child and you were raised to be a leader, pretty independent. Maybe you are the last child and the other two are older. And by the time parents get to the last kid, sometimes that last kid's raising themselves just a bit, right? So that's my experience. My brothers are 8 and 13 years older than me. So I am, they were way older by the time my mom had me. And I think my mom probably went back to work a few years after I was born. I don't know, 3 or 4 maybe. And my grandparents were helping raise me. And so in that case, I would say that that's probably where my self-sufficiency came from. Now, when I'm talking self-sufficiency, I'm not just talking about like tasks, getting the job done. I'm also talking about an emotional self-sufficiency, a psychological self-sufficiency, which we're going to dive into more. But okay, so birth order, being raised that way, being raised to be strong and independent. Other things that can be a source of this is being told not to express your feelings, like, or not being told directly, but also not having a place for that. I have many female clients who it's not that their parents said, don't be too much, don't be too dramatic, don't be too this, or suck it up. Like, yes, there's plenty like that, but there's plenty where they weren't told that. It just was not, it was kind of an unspoken known that if you were stuck or struggling, you figured out a way and you boom, 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 you move past it, you move through it. And so there are spoken and unspoken messages. And then another one is the fourth one is a fourth source of this is you could have learned along the way that others can't be relied on or depended on. And so you became very self reliant. If people let you down, this doesn't have to be your parents. It could be other people. It could be in childhood. It could be in friendships. It could be with extended relatives. It could be once you got to adolescence with friend groups, those become the center of the teenager's world, or could have been in relationships with romantic relationships. So this dynamic could have its source in a variety of places. And if you're listening to this episode, I'm going to assume that this dynamic resonates for you. So I want you to think about some of these sources and just let your mind float through like, what are some of the pathways for me becoming this kind of woman? And so that will help you on your journey. So this is not obviously a one and done where you now all of a sudden become someone who gets really good at asking for help and delegating. And now you're like maximizing your energy and your efforts. No, this, as I said, this is actually a paradigm shift. Because there are going to be times where you're going to have to let other people do things for you, even though everyone isn't reliable, even though everyone isn't as good as you are at doing it, even though you can do it better, stronger, faster, more efficiently, that there are still going to be times where you're going to let others do things. Why? Because that is just the structure. Let's talk about marriage, right? If you are someone who you're always doing it all and you can and you like to because you like the way it looks, if you're not yet resentful that your partner's not sharing the load, you will be. I can promise you that you will be. Because anyone who ends up doing everything themselves because they believe that they do it quicker, faster, more efficiently, or the right way, eventually is going to be resentful that other people aren't picking up on how to do it just as quickly, fastly, efficiently, or properly. And that's actually not the goal. The goal is that you become someone who can be okay with how other people do things. And if you listen to my first episode, um, episode 1, which is titled "Don't Wait Until the Kids Get Older to Start Nurturing Your Marriage," that that this is really about allowing yourself to become someone who can think differently about this. And this is about allowing yourself to make adjustments to what is okay, what is acceptable, what is the standard, and that these things can shift depending upon what stage of life you're in, what stage of marriage you're in, and what stage your family is in. And so, one of the big shifts for us was when my husband started taking over. So, post COVID, we both started working from home. My husband then actually retired from the work he was doing and really took a much more active role in our home because I was expanding my business and my practice, my therapy practice, and also my online coaching business at that time. And my parents had moved in with us because my dad had a stroke. So this is 2020. So that year, we had a lot of changes in how we were operating in our home. We went from two incomes, both people working outside of the home, to one income, both of us working in the home. And we were also dividing up household duties. And now my husband was doing the majority of them. So this was a big shift. I couldn't do it all. I didn't want to do it all. And so I had to really create some space for him to develop his own way of doing things in the house, his own route of driving our daughter to school, his own way of navigating the kitchen, his own way of how he meal prepped. None of those were the way I did it. But, and let me tell you, it wasn't easy for me to create the space for to allow him to have his own way of doing things because I am by nature a type A, very organized woman, who can just sort of like see things 3 steps ahead, and I know what needs to be done. But his mind doesn't operate that way. He has a ton of strengths, but his mind just doesn't operate that way. So, and there is no right or wrong way. I had to really get clear on this with myself. And so this was a paradigm shift for me, a paradigm shift for him, and a paradigm shift in our marriage that I would say took a solid year, because there were lots of things that were shifting. So if you're a woman and you're doing it all, I read an interesting article recently about sort of the fair play game about dividing up duties. So that didn't work for us because we actually like to be more fluid. We also don't like to own a card. And then what happens if someone owns a responsibility and then they forget to do it? Does the other person not do it? They're harboring resentment. The way my husband and I have really been able to navigate this is we both pretty much know what our primary responsibilities are, and then we both fill in and pick up. We both actually feel at this point, 20 years of marriage in and almost 5 years post COVID, we both feel like um, we're both mostly contributing to the overall household. Who cleans more, who cooks more, who shops more, who works more, who does what. It doesn't really matter because what we're looking at is a whole pie and all of the slices of the pie that it takes to run our household. And are we carrying um, roughly equal weight in the end? I would say probably yes. We don't look day to day. We don't look task by task. You have to really take a sort of a 10,000-foot view on this. Knowing though that when we were first working it out in the weeds of it, that it probably wasn't equal. But I always trust that in the end it's going to be equal. So here's one of the things that I really was able to accomplish through this paradigm shift for myself is that really being able to let certain things go and let myself be someone who didn't actually need to do it all, didn't have to do it all. In fact, all of it didn't even need to be done. What that did for me was it created on the back end the building of a certain kind of self trust that I didn't have before, and one that I have now, which is everything is figure outable. So we were on a vacation recently and there were some like hiccups and stressors. And I just kept saying, nah, everything is figure outable. Okay. It's all figure outable. I love my vacations. I take them fairly seriously because it is really the best time for me to get away and unplug. I'm not great at unplugging when I'm home. And so, like, just being honest with you, I'm not great at unplugging when I'm home. So I really put a lot of expectation on my vacations to let me do that. So when there's hiccups, I'm not always like, oh, I'm not always like really like smooth with like, no biggie. But really the place that I've come to is, you know what, everything is figure outable. And so the reason why I can say that and believe it and not get that pang in my stomach that I used to get is because I've actually developed this level of self-trust from being shown again and again and again that a difficult thing can happen, a stressor can happen, an unforeseen circumstance can happen. And I'm telling you again and again and again, as an individual, as a woman, as a wife, as part of my family, all of it. And we work it through, we figure it out. So I'm being shown something that is stressful, that is tough, that is challenging. And then I have the experience of working it out and figuring it out. And on the back end, it builds self trust. So, where I am now at this point is I don't get worried about those things. I don't care if there's more sugar in that dinner than we planned for. So being in perimenopause, I manage my sugar intake and I manage my like I don't I manage it, meaning I'm aware of it. And I'm also aware of my protein intake. I know what I want to hit. So, look, if my husband made something and it had more sugar than I wanted, okay, fine, I'm going to eat it. But I'm saying, like, just as a reminder, I don't really want to use these added whatever sauces and stuff. But, like, it's not a big deal. It's not going to be a problem. So, I've really worked on allowing myself to become less rigid and controlling on those things. And I can only do that because of that process I went through that created a lot of trust in myself. And if it doesn't work out, it's going to be fine because the way it does end up, if it doesn't work out, let me reframe that. If it doesn't work out the way I plan it to work out, it's going to be fine because it's going to work out in some other way, which is the way I needed to work out. And I believe that. I actually believe that. And at 51, married 20 years, um, and have had all the life experiences I've had thus far, that is true for me, that it does work out. It works out one way or another. And I'm capable of being someone who could work it out. So I want you to borrow that. I want you to borrow that belief for now as you move on this pathway of doing this yourself. Everything is figure outable. And if it doesn't work out the way you need it to, it will work out in some way that you will figure out that that is just the way it needs to work out. And then a third element of this is really creating the safety in the body around the vulnerability. And vulnerability comes when we're letting other people do things for us. When we are putting the outcome in the hands of someone else, your partner, your husband, extended family, someone you hire, someone at work, whatever it is, a mentor, a coach, a therapist, that you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable. And when you do that and you create the safety in your body, you do things that make that vulnerability feel like a strength. Like, I can do this. I can handle this. I am okay. This is good for me. This is helpful. And you breathe through that and you do other kinds of safety exercises. You start to build the connection between vulnerability in certain settings is safe, is okay, is comfortable, is actually a strength. And so I began to trust how I felt, how things could look, how things would turn out. I trusted that my reactions to things would be okay. I trusted that if I was going to expose my needs or be stripped of that shield of being someone who had it all together all the time, that I would be okay. And guess what? I am. I am okay. And so I'm bringing that to you because as a woman who is carrying that shield, that coat of armor, you've got it all, you've got it looking like you're doing it all. I know that behind the scenes, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel great because you're wearing yourself down. And the reality is you're probably not actually spending enough time doing the things that nourish you and light your soul up. Stopping at a coffee shop in the middle of a day. I'll tell you the things that I like to do. Stopping at a coffee shop in the middle of the day and giving myself a half an hour to like have coffee in the middle of the day at a time I wouldn't normally do that. or giving myself afternoon time to sit and read my book while the bed needs to be made or laundry needs to be folded. Or actually doing my workout first on a Saturday morning before we do anything else. So I want you to think about how you can start taking care of yourself because you're also giving yourself more space because you're delegating more things to other people. And that asking for help is actually your superpower. It's not your weakness, it's your superpower. So there's a couple links in the show notes. My latest free masterclass, and maybe the link to my upcoming masterclass. It depends when I publish this episode, but I know it's coming up in January. And also my quiz, what's blocking love? If you are a independent strong woman, you're probably blocking love for one reason or another without even realizing it. And if you are, and if that resonates, go ahead and have a listen to I have a listen, actually go ahead and take that link and download it and take my quiz. And then you'll get some quick guidance, some quick strategies on how to make a shift in those things that you're doing. And that's it for today's episode. I'm doing a bunch of short ones for you because I know that you can listen to them on a quick commute to dropping your kids off from school or picking them up from somewhere or driving yourself to work. So for that, today, that is it. Have a lovely rest of your day, week, wherever you are.